everyone, Steve Angel here with Traditional Outdoors, and welcome to episode 1 where we'll really start getting into the content in our series of Traditional Archery and Bow Hunting 101 series of videos. If you haven't watched the quick intro video to this series, I'll put a link at the top of this video. Please be sure to go back and check that out, either before you finish this or after you finish this video. But in this video, we're going to start talking about the basic equipment that you need as a budding traditional archer or potentially a traditional bow hunter to get started in the sport. And it goes without saying, the first thing you need is a bow. Now, I don't want you to get hung up on all the different styles and types of bows right now. We will do a video on those in the very near future. But as I said in the introduction to this video, I strongly recommend you go out, find a local club, get out there and actually try shooting some of these different bows and see what really fits you best and what you enjoy the most. For the purpose of today's video, though, there are a couple of things I do want to point out that you should keep in mind when you start looking at picking up your first traditional bow. If you're a budding new archer that has never shot archery or traditional archery in the past, or maybe you did but it's been many years ago, I strongly recommend you start out with a fairly light bow, something in the probably 20 to 30 pound range. Depending on your size, your strength, you may want to go lower. You possibly could go a little bit higher, but I think that's just a good average range for someone who's never shot before. When I say 20 to 30 pound range, what I'm meaning is every bow, or almost every bow, will have a marking somewhere on the bow that says something like 20 at 28, or maybe it's 45 at 26, something like that, but it's going to tell you how many pounds that bow will measure and pull at a specific draw length. So if you have a bow that's marked at 20 at 26, then if you take that bow and pull that bow back to 26 inches and measure the weight that you would be holding, it would be somewhere really close to that 20 pound mark. So keep that in mind when you're looking at bows and trying to decide what you want to buy. Again, starting out, keep that number fairly low. The reason for that is you've got muscles that you haven't used that you're going to have to develop for shooting traditional archery, and it's going to take a little time. And if you start out low, you're going to find that you can shoot a lot more arrows and have a lot more fun, which is what this is all about, with that lighter bow. The lighter weight also gives you the ability to work on your form and really perfect your form. And I'm going to do a video on form, the basics of form, very soon. But just keep in mind that basically what form is a means of executing a shot the same every time. And having the proper form is very important to the future of being accurate in the sport. The other thing is repetition provides consistency. So if you do things over and over again, the chances are you're going to do them the same each time. And consistency is really what builds accuracy in archery in general, but especially in traditional archery. So you want to shoot a lot of arrows, and you can do that better with a lighter poundage bow. Now, if you are a modern compound hunter, or you're looking to get into traditional archery, and you've been shooting bows in the 50, 60, 70 pound range, then you can probably start out a little bit higher, but again, you don't want to overbow yourself. For people in that situation, you might can look at a 40 to 45 pound bow. But even though you're using those muscles with your modern equipment, it's a little bit different when you're shooting traditional gear, and I'm going to explain what that means and how that is. So with a modern bow, and I shot compounds for many years, a good while ago, but the concept still remains the same. You have the concept of let off in a compound. So when you start drawing a compound bow back, if that bow is set at 50 pounds, you're pretty much going to start out pulling right at 50 pounds, and that's going to be consistent through that draw until you get close to full draw, the cams or the wheels engage, and when they roll over, that's where you get that concept of let off. So you're only holding a percentage of that bow's draw weight at full draw. And in some bows, that can be as high as 70 or 80%. So when you take a traditional bow, it's just the opposite. The bow is at its lightest when it's at brace, when it's not being drawn back. And as you start drawing that bow back, the further you draw it, the more the poundage increases until you get to that weighted draw length. So if you come back to that 28 inches or 26 inches, if the bow's rated at 45 pounds, that's where you're going to be holding that 45 pounds. So while you have those muscles develop some, they're going to have to develop a lot more to hold that extra weight at full draw, because even a 45 pound bow, when you're holding it full draw, a 70 pound compound is at best probably only going to be 35 pounds if it's a 50% let off bow at full draw. There's a big difference there. That 10 pounds makes a huge difference. So again, you want to be able to have a bow that you can shoot effectively, shoot a lot, and shoot consistently, and really work on your form. So again, that 40 to 45 pound range is probably a good marker. It could give or take some on either side depending on your age, your size, your stature, so you may want to go a little bit lower. You may be able to go a little bit higher, but in most situations, 45 pounds is going to be about the max for someone just starting out. The last note I'll make on the bow is if you do have to buy a bow just to get started and you want to move up in weight later, you can either sell that entry-level bow that you bought, or perhaps even better, pass that along to someone else who's just looking to get started, promote the sport, and start a pay-it-forward type scenario with that person. The next thing you're going to need is arrows, and I'm not going to go into the different types of arrow material at a lot of length in this video. I will do a future video on that. But for all intents and purposes today, the majority of shooters are shooting one of either wood, aluminum, or carbon. All of these function very well. There's pros and cons to each, which we'll get into later. But for the purpose of this video and just starting out, I'm going to recommend most people start with wood. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, basic shafts without the fancy fletching and cresting, basic wood arrows are going to cost you the least amount of money. They're fairly durable, and the best part about it is wood arrows are sold based on a weight range, and that's called spine. We'll talk about that again in a future video, or more in a future video. But when you think about spine, if you buy a 25 pound at 28 inch bow, then most likely you're going to be able to buy a set of wooden arrows spined 20 to 25 or 25 to 30 pounds, and you're going to get good results. You're going to be able to start shooting right away and have an arrow that performs fairly well. As you get better, you may want to better fine-tune your arrows to your bow, and that's a topic for a future video. But again, just getting started out, it makes it very easy to go out and buy arrows that should perform fairly well out of your bow. Moving on from arrows, you're going to need a form of finger protection. Shooting with bare fingers can be done. Your fingers can get sore. You can build up calluses over time to make it better, but you won't necessarily ever get as clean a release as you will with a glove or a tab. Also, you can develop some nerve damage in the ends of your fingers, so you want to do this over a long period of time. Get finger protection. It's fairly cheap. The two different types are tabs, which I have here in my right hand, and glove, which I have in my left. There are some pros and cons to each, but ultimately it comes down to which you like best. So this is another one of those things where try to get out to a local club and try each of them, see which one you like the best, and we'll probably do a future video where we talk about the different styles of each and a little bit more of the pros and cons. But for right now, again, try to get out and see what you like best and get something accordingly. The next item is an arm guard, and I almost put this as an optional item, but I do think for the person just starting out, it's probably more of a necessity. A beginning archer, again, I keep mentioning this, developing the muscles and your proper form. The typical person who starts shooting traditional archery do not have the muscles yet to do that properly. And the first thing that you'll see is they'll lock their bow arm because it makes it easier to hold that bow with your bow arm if the elbow is locked and everything's in line. So you're not necessarily doing it with your muscles, you're doing it with a locked joint. And what that does is it turns your forearm and your wrist into the path of the string, so that when you shoot, the string will slap your wrist. It can bring a whelp, it can make a bruise, it stings a good bit. And again, you're doing this to have fun. So you don't want to deal with that, and you don't want to potentially develop flinches and so forth, because you know that is coming. So when you start out, get you an arm guard. It just straps across your wrist and protects you from that string. As you get better, as you get stronger, as you develop proper form, you're bending that elbow slightly. You may not need the arm guard. And again, give that to someone who's just getting started, pay it forward. Or if you're going to become a bow hunter, you may want to keep it, because when in cold weather, you may want to use it just to keep the loose clothing out of the way of your bowstring. The last item that you really need to have is a target. There's a lot of options for targets. You can, if you want to buy a target, there's bag targets, blob foam targets, block targets, 3D targets. Any of those will work well depending on how much money you want to spend. A bale of hay or a bale of straw works just as well and is really economical. If you've got an area where you can just get out and walk through the woods and roam, stump shooting is fantastic, and it's something that modern archers really don't get to experience because their arrows are moving so fast and cost so much they don't want to take a chance of losing or breaking one just by sending it through the woods. But with trad, you can get out, you can find, you can shoot leaves, sticks, pine cones, stumps. There's lots of targets out there that you can shoot at, and you can have a lot of fun doing it. Just remember to be safe. Think about what's beyond your target. When you're getting started, you are going to miss, and you don't want an error getting lost or potentially hurting someone. If you're shooting in your backyard and you're in a neighborhood or a community, make sure you've got a good backstop, whether that be a dirt bank or some heavy fabric that you can put up. Because if you miss, and you will miss, you don't want that arrow traveling into someone else's yard, potentially hitting their house, a person, or a pet. So again, remember to be safe. The last piece of equipment I'm going to talk about here real briefly is, I think, optional for the person starting out, and that's a quiver. So I'll probably do an episode just on quivers, but real quickly, you've got types that attach to the bow and types that you wear on your body, and we'll leave it at that for now. But this is just a means of carrying extra arrows. When you're just starting out, you can stick them up in the ground in your backyard if you're shooting in your backyard. If you're getting out roaming around, stick an extra arrow or two in your back pocket, and you're probably fine. Quivers are very personal, so get out and try a few, see what you like before you invest the money and buy one. And like many of us, you'll probably end up with several different styles for several different situations. But to get started, you really don't need a quiver. So that wraps up our basic equipment. I'll probably throw some links down at the bottom of this video with some basic items you may want to look at. You can potentially purchase through Amazon. That helps support the channel if you decide to do so. But ultimately, find what works best for you. Find what you like. And buy that equipment because it'll make you happier in the long run, and you'll just get more enjoyment out of the sport, and that's what it's all about. So until next time, I hope this helps. Watch for future videos. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Get out there and get shooting. Take care, everyone.